Julie, how are you today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. It's good to talk with you. So have the kids picked out their Halloween costumes yet?
Yes, that's all done.
Yeah?
All done. Yep.
Do you dress up for Halloween?
I always do a little something. I wore a dress with an R2D2 or C3PO. Who's the little guy who squeaks?
R2D2.
R2D2. I had an R2D2 dress. And then last year, Darren and I did this Where's Waldo? So Waldo and is it Wanda? And I don't know what I'm going to do this year. Not sure.
Okay. My wife had actually roped me into getting one of those inflatable costumes this year. So it looked like I was riding a unicorn, which I thought was fantastic. And I was going to be a fairy princess. We get the thing, and it's the adult size. Look, you know me. I'm not a tall guy. This thing wouldn't fit on me. Like, it only came up to my shoulders. So I'm now I don't know. I don't know what my backup costume's going to be.
Oh,
I know.
no.
I was so disappointed.
Oh, I'm
I was
sorry.
so looking forward to inflicting that on the audience on Halloween. But yeah. So I asked this because, moms and dads, we do sometimes have to dress up for the kids, especially when they're younger. And you've got a piece talking about how key moms are not only to Halloween, but to movements. And, look, I mean, the perfect example, Moms Demand Action, right? For
Right.
Gun Sense in America, where we're going to get gun control by targeting moms. But you say it's not just the gun control groups that are doing this. This is also now happening within the environmental movements.
Yeah, it's been happening for a lot of years, and I've been tracking this. I've been writing on sort of the fears of food and the fears of really modernity. I mean, things that make products better and safer and more durable and cheaper and longer lasting. I mean, a lot of products that utilize plastics, for instance, have chemicals in them. And, around 2 decades ago, there started to be this agitation about chemicals and, oh my gosh, are we being poisoned? And then that went into food. And of course, with the environmental movement, you see a lot of this where there'll be some sort of environmental group agitating about things. And it's, I think it's easy to dismiss some of these more radical environmental groups. People just kind of roll their eyes and go, ugh, Greenpeace is upset about something, or this organization is upset about something. But what they've started to do is employ moms. They'll get a group of mom activists, and some are legitimate and actual concerned moms in a community who, and it's very grassroots, they get together and they say, I'm really concerned about this. And those groups can be very, very effective. And in my piece at the Huffington Post, I mentioned a group actually in the St. Louis area. They're a group of women and men, but they got together and they noticed that there was a cancer cluster in their community. And it turned out that there had been radiological materials that had been dumped there from the Manhattan Project. And at the time it had been dumped there, nobody lived around there. And then they built houses on that space. And so they worked together with the EPA and other government agencies, state and local, and really came up with a cleanup process and settlements and other things for the victims. And it was a great example of how moms got really active and really worked to improve their communities. But sadly, this sort of model is being used now by a lot of activist organizations. And I mentioned the Teamsters. The Teamsters don't have a great reputation in many cases. And so they often partner with moms that kind of give them this softer side. And let's face it, it is much harder as a politician to dismiss the concerns of a mother as opposed to a union, an organized union. So it's sad to see, again, there are some really good examples of women being active and moms being active, but sadly, this strategy has really been used by big environmental interests and big labor, sort of pushing these moms, but really they're kind of shell organizations that have been set up.
Well, and when you say this tactic, I mean, you mean specifically this tactic of radiological contamination, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the fear of, listen, and in St. Louis, this group, Just Moms St. Louis, which has been working with the Teamsters, this, as you write, this is about a landfill.
Yeah,
Which, you can argue that landfills aren't pretty and they smell bad and yeah, you'd be right. But that's not their argument right now. It has been their argument in the past. Their
Right.
argument now is that, oh my gosh, there's this radiological contamination. And so all of these homes around this landfill need to be bought by the state, and the homeowners need to be able to go buy a nicer home somewhere else.
Yeah.
Even though the state and the city and the EPA, they've all done testing and they have found no. You say all agreed. This was the EPA, Centers for Disease Control, Army Corps of Engineers, the state of Missouri all agreed the concentrations of radiation were within the normal range and below the EPA standards. So, you talk about the culture of alarmism a lot, and this, to me, you're right, seems to be a crystal clear example of trying to scare the hell out of people.
Right. Well, look.
For your own, so that your own cause gets advanced, right? Which has nothing to do, by the way, with what it is that you're trying to scare the hell out of people about.
Exactly right. And look, this is the thing. When you look at what they can do, there's a way in which they can cap this material. In this particular landfill, there's very, very low levels of sort of radiological material, extremely low levels that would never. It would be like standing out in the sun for 5 minutes. It's not going to harm you at all. And yet they know that this will scare people, terribly. Now, there is a way to sort of, cap this off so that it doesn't get into water. Wildlife doesn't come in contact with it. Humans don't come in contact with it. But that's really a much more affordable solution. What these activists want is a huge buyout. This is going to be billions of dollars. I don't really know the full price, but it's a lot more expensive, and that's what they want. They want this sort of higher payout. And again, they're scaring a lot of people unnecessarily. But you're right. You mentioned, with the Second Amendment issues, a lot of these organizations, and for instance, Bloomberg is not exactly a lovable character. But if he finances a group of moms who push the message that he wants to send, it looks a lot better. And again, it's very hard to dismiss or even debate with a concerned mother. Politicians are very nervous about appearing to dismiss the concerns of women and moms. And so it's a very powerful ally to have. And again, a lot of these moms groups and mothers that are activists really don't stick to facts. They use a lot of fear-based arguments to push their agenda, and it's not fair. It's not fair because these are trusted. I mean, I said in the beginning of my piece, moms are thought to be the ultimate virtuous voice. They are sort of free of any contaminants, right? Of any kind of big money. Of course, not when it comes to Bloomberg. I guess that's the kind of money that's okay. So again, activists have really understand the power of a mother delivering your message as opposed to, some big environmental organization or a labor organization.
Absolutely. And again, capitalizing on that genuine concern, right? And so, I mean, that's even better for the big corporation or the anti-gun billionaire. You capitalize on the genuine concern, so there's absolute authenticity there.
Well,
right?
Yes,
but it's not the concern that's actually the message. The message is we are concerned, we need to do X, and it's the do X that happens to be the viewpoint of the big corporation or the Teamsters Union or Michael Bloomberg or whoever. Well, go ahead.
And there is a real danger here too. It's like I mentioned, there are good examples, and I mentioned one in my piece, in my Huffington Post piece, where I talk about Coldwater Creek, where these people came together. They were, they're our age, this group of people of our age, and they got, as we did several years ago, when you sort of get back in touch with people you never thought you would get back in touch with through Facebook. And they started to notice that many of them are coming down with some very rare cancers. It is really, when you read about what this group of people did to raise awareness and they really did become activists, and they really began to understand what was happening in their community and what needed to be done to make it safe again, and worked in collaboration with federal and state and local agencies. And it's a really wonderful story. But when you have this almost hijacking of this strategy by these environmental organizations and big labor and people like Bloomberg, well, people aren't going to listen so much the next time a concerned mom raises a question, because if it's all sort of a strategy that's used now,
Yeah.
mothers increasingly look sort of a part of the movement. So it takes away from that, and it concerns me that people will take some of these concerned mothers less seriously because they've been hijacked by these big groups.
I suspect that you're right. Does it trust? I mean, it's a weird way of putting it, but does it damage the mom brand?
Yeah.
In terms of trustworthiness, right? And that's part of the problem, is that you can now talk about the mom brand as opposed to actual, concerned parents. And Julie, you're right. We're probably always going to have these two things existing side by side. These legitimate groups, like what you just described, the Coldwater Creek group. And then the groups that are, again, more using events like that for their own cause. And, I guess some of it is up to us to discern the difference. And maybe we are becoming savvier. And part of that is we become maybe a little bit more cynical. And you're right. I don't know what the answer is, but it is worth pointing out the difference. And I'm glad that you did highlight that group there that really was getting together, because that is the type of I think genuine activism that you can see around the country, and that technology does enable, as you say. I mean, these were people who what would have been the odds 20 years ago of them figuring this out? I guess they all would have had to get together at the high school reunion, right, and talk about their health problems.
Right.
But Facebook allows them to do this, and so there are those opportunities, but yeah, it's kind of depressing to see how. Why don't you write about something cheerier, Julie?
I know.
Just leave the bad stuff out, and just give us the.
Let's talk about Halloween candy. Oh, we should. You know what we should touch on? We should touch on this. Did you? We can. I'm going to write on this so we can touch on this next week. But this is a more fun topic. Did you hear about the Cosmopolitan article, which said, hey, don't let your daughters dress up as, if you're like a white kid, don't let your daughters dress up as Moana.
Yes.
So that's a good topic. That's the just peak absurdity right there, right? I mean, it is just.
And didn't Redbook get involved too?
I don't know.
I think I saw something about how Redbook. I think Redbook had Cosmo's back on this. If this is a little outside of my wheelhouse, to be honest with you. Not generally my.
You don't read these two
normal reading material, but yeah. We could talk about that next week, as we'll be. I think it'll be on Halloween. So if you join us on Tuesday,
should I? Maybe I should come in dressed up.
I think that you should. Maybe as Moana.
Right? No, I get enough hate mail.
All right. Julie Gunlock from the Independent Women's Forum. You can read her latest at the Huffington Post. Julie, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me.